Which to play? I want to play you, but I want to play you, but I want to play you, but I want to... Last Will. This is a game that I only heard about maybe 3-4 months ago, but the moment that I heard about the story behind it, I knew I had to get a hold of this. The basic idea is your dear uncle passed away, and in his will, he stipulated that he's going to dole out some money to the various nephews and nieces, and he was going to give the grand inheritance to whoever could spend the initial inheritance as quickly as possible. Very much shades of Brewster's Millions, obviously, if you're old enough to know what that movie is. But yeah, I was very excited to get a hold of this. So Last Will, show the box again. It's a put out by Czech Games Editions, and it's a 2 to 5 player game that plays, it says, in about 45 to 75 minutes. Yes, the first game probably more to the 75, but once you get a hold of what's going on, it's actually pretty basic and probably get it under an hour for sure. So yeah, I've got a number of plays of this in, and well, let me show you how it works. This is a 2-player setup of Last Will. The object of the game is to lose all your money, to have no equity, and to go into debt. The first player who can do that wins. The core concepts to this game are on each turn you get a certain amount of actions. So on one turn, like the blue player, they could have 3 actions, and maybe the yellow player might only start with 1. The most important concept to describe in this game is there's 3 main types of cards. There's white cards, which are single-use cards. You use them one time and then you discard them. There's black bordered cards. These are cards that get played to your player board, and they're available to you in successive rounds. And then there's companion cards, which augment the white bordered and the black bordered cards that I mentioned. And they come in 4 varieties. There's a guest, there's a horse, there's a dog, and there's a chef. Here I'll describe the 5 rounds of the game. Phase 1 is the setup phase, and that's the round where you get rid of old cards, put new ones out. In the first round of the game, players get 6 cards to look at. What they're going to do is they're going to only keep 2 of these, and things that will affect their decision is what's available on this board and also the market values that are represented here. In Phase 2, the planning phase, players take their planning markers and they place them on this turn order track here in order to decide what abilities they get during the turn. So, for example, I could have yellow place their marker here, and what this means is they'll immediately get to draw 2 cards from any combination of the face-down decks. They'll get 2 workers to place during the next phase, and they'll also start with 2 actions available. In a 2-player game, it's slightly different. The start player puts a blocking marker out first, then the second player puts out a blocking marker, then the second player makes his choice for the turn, and then finally the start player makes their decision. In this example, blue is the only person who gets to draw cards, so they get to take their pick of 1 card from any of these piles. In Stage 3, the Errand phase, players now take turns placing their workers on the various spaces around the board, and they do this in the order from left to right displayed here, and then they keep going back until they've used all their workers. In the example that I've given, yellow is going to have 2 workers at their disposal, and blue is only going to have 1. The abilities available in this phase are shown by any of these circular spaces found throughout the board. So anything on this board means that if you play a token here, that means you get that card immediately. If you place it in one of these 2 spaces, it means the first person there immediately gets to choose from one of these 3 cards, and then the next person gets to choose the next. If you go here, you get to have one of these player board extensions added to your player board. If you go here, you get to spend 2 money immediately. If you go here, you get to adjust the market values for the mansions and the farms. And what that means is I can rearrange these into any order that I would like. And finally, this space allows each player to, once per round, play a piece here in their colored space, and they are allowed to draw 1 card from any of these 4 piles. To demonstrate, I'll have yellow play up here. They'll grab this card immediately. Blue will use their one marker to choose this card here. And then yellow will go to this space and they'll pay £2 immediately. Now in the fourth phase, the action phase, players in turn order perform all their actions. So yellow, based on the previous phase, had determined that they only get 3 actions this turn. And so now, looking at their cards, or any cards that have already been played to the board, they can use these actions to perform certain abilities. A really important card that I picked up this round was this one, the Old Friend. Now, these are basically called helpers. There's a number of characters who have special abilities. And any card that has an ability down at the bottom is an ability that's always in effect. You don't actually have to activate it. So, in order to play this to my board, being that this is a black bordered card, I place this in one of these available slots. You can see that there's a symbol with an A, which means it costs me an action to put this down. So I'm going to put this down. It's going to cost me 1 action, but the innate ability of this card says that I get 1 free action, so I immediately bump this back up. I now have 3 more actions to spend. For my next action, I'm going to play this permanent reservation card, and the same deal applies to this. In order to play it down to my board, it's going to cost me 1 action. And I'm actually going to use it right away. And the way this works is you slide this card down to indicate that you've used it this turn, and then you pay the cost that's shown at the top right of the card. So in this case, I'm paying 4 money, and I'm also paying 1 action to use this. With my final action, I'm going to play my Townhouse card. This is one of 3 different types of mansion symbols that can be played to your board, and this is different than normal cards like these in that these represent properties that you own, and so they have a certain amount of equity associated with them. So the way this works is I get to place this card down here, and again it costs me 1 action, and then I have to pay the current market value of this house. What this is I look at the very topmost value of this building, and it's 15 money. I look at the current market value of the orange properties, and I can see it's +1. So I owe 16 money for performing this action. Regardless of what I ended up paying for the property, it still is a 15 value house. So I place this marker right up here at the top to show that that's what its current value is. Now I'll demonstrate Blue's turn. Based on the previous round, they get 4 actions at their disposal. For the first action, I'm going to also play a mansion. Now this is a yellow mansion, and based on the market value board over there, it's at +3. So I'm going to play this, spend an action. I'm going to pay 8 + 3, so that's 11. Place a house, and then continue. So my next action, I will also put down a card on my board for 1 action. By moving it down, I have to pay whatever's at the top, so 1 action and 4 money. And the final thing I'm going to do is I'm going to play this guest card that I picked up. And the way this works on black bordered cards is you'll see any spots that they can be attached to. So I see there's a little picture of a woman here, and there's also an accompanying circle with an action symbol in it. So what that means is to play this card, I just discard it, I put a disc in that section, and I pay 1 action. And that's my turn. The final phase of each round is the cleanup phase, and it entails mostly what you'd expect. You clear off all the existing cards on the table, you put back all the markers, you advance the round marker up. But one of the interesting things that you do is with the player boards. At the end of every round, players' cards on their player boards reset so that they can be used again in future rounds. So we simply push them all back up. Now, had the house actually been pushed down, all you would do is push it back up to reset it. But if you didn't actually use the house this round, you're allowed to depreciate it. And what that means is the value of the house will drop down by 1 spot. So here it's at the 15, and we pop it down to 13. Blue does the same thing. They depreciate this house by 1, and that's now the minimum that they can go. They can't depreciate anymore, and we'll reset this card back up. Also, had a player been holding 3 or more cards, they have to discard down to 2. And that's pretty much how you play this game. There's a lot of little nuances that you have to learn, like many of these cards have lots of iconography that you basically have to learn and explore to get the gist of the game. I didn't actually explain how to use the white bordered cards, but I'll do one example here. Had I had in my hand this card, I could play it immediately for 1 action, and it would cost me 2 money. And if I had have had a companion card that matches the symbol here, so this one is of a dog, so if I had have had that in my hand, I could also play that for free. It wouldn't cost me an extra action, and so by playing this card, it would cost me 4 money. The game continues until one of 2 conditions is met. The most basic of conditions is once you hit the end of the 7th round, you see who has the least money or who is the most in debt, and that's how you determine the winner. Or if someone actually goes into debt before the 7th round, say if someone went into the negatives on the 5th round, then that would be the last round. You'd play it to its completion, and that would be it. One note about going into debt, though. A big rule of the game is you can't actually go below 0 if you own any properties. You have to sell your properties first, and then get your way under 0. So in order to sell a house, you would have to spend 1 action, and then look at the current value of the house. So here it is 6. And let's say that the market value of the yellow mansions is -2. And so you do that calculation, 6 minus 2, and you would get 4 money back for selling the house. Then you would be allowed to go below 0 and potentially win the game. So I love this game. I think it's just the theme. It really like speaks to me in some way. I love the idea. It's so unique from everything else I've played, where you get a bunch of money and you gotta spend it. You gotta waste it as much as you can. You gotta buy houses for as much as you can and sell them for as low as you can. And yeah, I really am excited every time that I go to play this. I played this with 2 and 4 players, and I've quite enjoyed it each way. Actually, the 2-player game is slightly more heady, simply because there's a slight variant where you're placing blocking dummy tokens in order to do the initial turn order selection, and it's so subtle, but it adds that little extra layer of head-hurtiness that I like in my games. Sorry. Now, the theme of this game is actually pretty funny. There's a lot of these cards that have a subtle bit of humor that it's easy to miss when you're just dug into the game and really trying hard to win. But there's certain things that, once I got a chance to slow down a bit, kind of made me laugh. Like, here's this one card, and it's basically saying that if you do the basic action, you get to take your dinner for £2. But it also says you can take your dog to dinner for an extra £2. So just a funny little way that you can sort of waste your money. Another one of them is you can have this helper player, and this is the Coachman. And if you can see that there, he's drinking. And that means that you can hire lazy slackers who will just basically cost you more money just because they're in your employ. So, I don't know, just that sort of thing just tickles me just a little bit when I have time to slow down to smell the roses. I do have one tiny little, small little irk about this game, and it doesn't hurt my enjoyment whatsoever, just it kind of strikes me slightly wrong, and it's this. Here's a card where basically what's happening is you're going to the theater and you're spending £3. Now, it's kind of weird. When you go to buy a mansion, you can see that the top price there is £23 for buying a mansion. Something's kind of off with those numbers there. I don't see a way around it. I understand why the designer did it this way. It's just kind of weird, but whatever. In the end, I really like this game. There's just this draw to just getting those cards and seeing which ones I can use to just totally just waste all my money, and I like it a lot. So who would I recommend this game for? I think the theme should essentially appeal to almost anyone, and the gameplay itself is pretty straightforward once you've played a full game and you understand all the concepts that are going on. But there is one issue which is going to keep it away from being called like a family game, and what that is there's a lot of iconography on this game, and it's somewhat reminiscent of Race for the Galaxy, except it's a lot easier than Race for the Galaxy, but it's still there, and it is a barrier to entry. And actually on the very back of the manual, there is a whole list of every single icon that's in the game, so like there's a really good reference. It's just yeah, it's the sort of thing that's going to scare off your typical non-gamer. If you handhold people through it, you could probably get them through it and, you know, eventually get them to like it. Just, yeah, just it's that one teensy little barrier that unfortunately is there. But beyond that, yeah, I see this for people who don't mind light to medium weight games. I love it, and I play pretty heavy games, and it's right up my alley. I don't think I'll ever pass up a play for this, at least until I'm into my 30s on this. But yeah, I love it. I'm so excited that I have it, and yeah, this is staying in my collection.